Hey everyone, Kate Borer and Fiona Pearman joining you this week for our Facebook Live, where we're continuing to talk about risk, innovation, and gender equality fee. And so far, we've talked about the two separately, innovation and risk. And today, we really want to talk about how they complement each other. I think traditionally, we tend to hold these two concepts, perhaps functions in organizations separately. Maybe they feel opposite or different or in competition with each other. But some of the things that we've talked about have really started to help us see how they really actually are in service of each other.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to understand our default assumptions and the way in which we think about, risk is often associated with certainty, with, data points, with definition, with rules, all of those kind of structures that are really important. And on the other side, we've got innovation, which is the uncertainty, the possibility, the unknown, leaning into that potential and looking at things curiously. And I think what we know is both of these kind of elements, if you like, are really holding a richness for the organization. And when we appreciate that and when we bring them together, there's a really powerful nexus that means that they can work together in service of the organization.
Yeah, I think when we think about risk, certainty, clarity, when we think about innovation, it is the unknown, it's the uncertain, that's the potency and the power of that. When we think about risk, the known information, what's the steps? It's on some level, and we see this not in the narrative in organizations. I can't do things because of risk. It's always the risk team that are stopping us from going after sales. So they can get known. The brand can kind of often be seen as kind of holding the business back or contracting the organization, of course, over to the innovation team who are doing all this sexy, exciting stuff and, on uncharted territories and all these sorts of things. So I think to your point around the default assumptions and or the brand that some of these either individuals with titles or functions can be left with, can be challenging. But when you start to see that risk, and we've talked a bit about this already, risk actually creates a container. It creates safety. It creates certainty. So a space within which people have the freedom to innovate, like what's in, what's out. When you can start to land on the fact that actually it helps create a safe space with which to innovate, then you can start to see how the risk structures, processes, conversations support the innovation conversation.
It's like there's a platform there from which we can do the exciting things, and we're doing it within a context that means we are not risking the whole organization or the viability of the organization over the long term. And I think those are the tensions that are playing out really beautifully here. And from our systemic work, we know that tensions are not to be avoided. They're actually something to harness. They're actually something to dig in and get curious about, because if we can bring these two powerful forces together, and if we can see them as unifying and actually offering organizations something different combined that would be available if we started to think of them as kind of two separate disciplines, that's a real opportunity. And I think just as you've talked about the opportunity that risk gives innovation also provides a really powerful way for risk to embolden and to actually start to think about things a little bit more from an open possibility point of view, not to throw out all of the things that we know that are important with risk. We want risk to be there. We want it to hold some of that structure that's so important. And at the same time, we want to be able to move from the very traditional risk averse or risk that kind of consciousness that says we can't or constrained into, well, what would be possible given what we understand about this situation? What could we do? And if we could move from risk averse to being risk aware, that's where innovation is really, I think, giving risk a place that is more useful in contemporary business and allows us to do some of the things that we know are going to be necessary. Organizations are faced with lots of challenges, lots of complexity, and we're going to have to be innovative in order to survive that.
Yeah, I think for me, when we talk about risk creating a container, I like to think of innovation as expanding that container, right? Like what is possible in service of the organization, what is possible in alignment with the strategy that the organization is pursuing, and how do we, to your point earlier, how do we, develop the awareness and increase our risk appetite in an appropriate way that means we're actually able to do more, be more, achieve more in alignment with the organization's outcomes. So I think some really beautiful distinctions in terms of this conversation. When we kind of held some of the thought leadership we do around this, and obviously there's so many of the acts of confidence are linked into risk, act of confidence number 5, fall down, get back up again, redefining your relationship with fear and failure. We know that is really significant part of the conversation around risk and the conversation around innovation as well. But I think some really beautiful interplays between, these two really important disciplines in organizations.
Yeah, I love the opportunity here. In fact, if you think about our work, the act of confidence comes before the feeling. Each time we take that step, we're moving into the unknown. We're taking a small step beyond the safety of what we currently know. And so being willing to be curious, be willing to take that action is kind of leaning towards innovation. And I think the other act of confidence that's really important here is, the clarity, really understanding what's in, what's out, having clarity of what we need in order to create that container for risk, and clarity of what we want to achieve. When we talk about innovation, it's not just innovation for the sake of it, it's innovation in service of something that's going to further the organization and ensure that it stays on track to achieve its goals.
So Tim, we're going to wrap it there. If you enjoyed today's confidence conversation, we'd love for you to tag us below or share it with someone in your network. If you would like to dig into a whole bunch more of our videos, there's so many over in our Facebook page, lots digging into that clarity and fear conversation we just flagged. And if and when you're ready to go deeper with your relationship with core confidence, visit our website, coreconfidence.com.au.